Someone has to pay for it. When I tell people, this railway you are celebrating, you will pay for it, people say that I was being cynical. You're paying for it. Yeah? So that's what I mean. The tax authorities then just look at who is the easiest person to tax.
Now, over the last 5 minutes, you've given us 3 recommendations, and you've used the term "I would." Those "I woulds" that you've mentioned right now in terms of changes you'd make in our taxation and so forth, have you handed them over to the president?
We don't hand them over to this president. We sit down with the president, the Minister for Finance, KRA, for example. We sit down and review these things, and we discuss which way do we want to go. And we have a path of how we are going to progressively have a better tax system. There is a tax policy which we are discussing, which is going to create a tax code that has more predictability. But the thing is, the fact that if you are in the kind of fiscal sort of distress that we are in, you end up with a tax system which has some irrational taxes in it. It's something that you cannot escape.
How long do you think Kenyans will have to bear with this? Because many of them would feel that the reason why they're not getting into
they have been bearing
revenue expansion that you're talking about.
They have been bearing with it for 5-6 years. And now that you have a new government, it's like their patience has run out. They will have to wait.
Well, they've listened to the promises that were very well illustrated last year.
They will wait. They will wait a couple of months, couple of years. And whatever, you can't do everything at once.
So now that you've taken us there, how long before the pressure begins to ease off? You sit in a think tank. You have minds calculating. When will Kenyans finally begin to get a break economically? Where we read good news in our business, and not the kind of news
Kenya is a very diverse economy. Right now, if you go to the entire northern Kenya, we are talking about 2.5 million animals have died. Yeah? So if you talk about the crisis in northern Kenya, there is, and some of the conflict you're seeing in Pokot, these are resource conflicts over water.
Resources.
Yeah. So sometimes I think the people in the city, they are a bit navel-gazing. They are thinking about themselves, and they're not looking at the country. It's very diverse. We have said that very clearly our strategy is an agriculture-led recovery. And if you look at the news, it's reporting the agriculture things we are doing. It's reporting the fertilizer program that we are doing. If you think, what are we doing there? I talked about cost of living, bringing down the cost of living. In the short term, we can see some inflation falling. So I don't know what expectations people have, but and where they sit. But some of these things also are going to have a huge distribution of consequences. To be honest, some of the people who are crying loudest are people who are benefiting a lot from the largesse of public. Tenderpreneurs, all sorts of things that were going on around here.
And I'm actually redirecting you to promises that the administration you serve made. For example, very clearly, pick any newspaper, and the promises in July were, we'll bring down the cost of living in the first 100 days, we'll support the establishment of agro-processing industries for farm inputs. The current food shortage is on the government's decision to remove subsidies and failure to implement food security policies. And once we get into office, we will change all that. And a time period was given.
And that's what we are doing.
We are way past
we rolled out. Hey, look. We don't determine how long crops take to grow. Okay, maize takes 7 to 8 months. It's planted in the long range. So even if we roll out interventions to improve the maize yield, which we are doing now, maize will be planted in March. It will be harvested in August. Okay? So we don't have control of that. But are we rolling out the programs we promised? We are. Yeah, but how long do they take? That's out of our control. But we have said, if you look at everywhere globally, inflation is going up. You've had an inflationary surge. Our inflation is coming down. When we removed the fuel subsidies, everybody said that we are going to stoke inflation. It hasn't. Yeah. So if you contextualize, We've rolled out the Hustler Fund. That has now a steady customer base of about 6 million people. We have almost 20 million people have onboarded. And that's a huge safety net for a lot of people. I see people making a lot of fun about what can you do with 500
I see some of your responses.
And people don't realize that for many Kenyans out there, 500 shillings is what they take home on a good day. So, and they don't have many good days. So on that day that they don't take home any money from whatever they are doing, it's a choice between having dinner and not having dinner. So the fact that they can actually have access to this easily accessible, affordable finance, it actually constitutes a very significant safety net for those people at the bottom. But they're not the ones who make noise up here. Because in fact, the one up here make fun of it.
Because you've been on this journey all along, from even before the elections, when did the Hustler Fund turn from a grant into a loan?
There was no point it was a grant. When we started out with the idea of the Hustler Fund, we were talking about finance for business, SMEs, okay? When we went out to talk to the people, their most serious pain point, they told us, was predatory lending by fintechs. All these fintechs who are lending them. And at the time when we did our research, and in fact it was public, we found that 14 million accounts had been blacklisted. So when we came in, they told the first thing we want you to help us with is get out of this predatory lending, what they call fuliza bondage. So that's what we addressed. Yeah? But the Hustler Fund itself, in terms of structure, it's a platform. It's not a one product thing. So the first product we rolled out is the one which people told us was their biggest pain point. And that has solved that problem. Yeah? All these people, and we are now on the way to taking all those people off the CRB. We have also talked to those people, and we've managed to change that policy. There will be no more blacklisting of people. We are going to switch to a credit scoring system so that you have low scores, high scores. People can decide to lend you, not to lend you, but there's no listing that you can say this person is completely shut out of the credit bucket. The next product, which we are rolling out in a couple of weeks, is a JAMA product, group lending product. Then after that, we will do an SME product. As it happens, we are also going to onboard an agricultural credit for inputs. We are going to onboard soon insurance premium, health insurance premium product, so that we can onboard more self-employed people into health insurance. So it's a platform with which we are going to do many, many, many things. But what happens is that people got stuck with one thing. That there's no point I recall talking about. There probably will be grant products for safety net type. People, maybe they're disabled, and other people, it's a whole host of things responding to different needs.
For a government that is working hard to raise revenue and build its reserves for future debt repayments and so many other things as well, where does this same government get money that they can borrow or that they can lend out at 8%, which is very hard to get out there?
The government borrows at 8%. So it's just passing on its borrowing cost to people.
So that's how the Hustler Fund is funded?
Every Thursday, the government goes to the market and floats treasury bills. True?
So why can't that 8% be then what is used to power government expenditure?
It does. Every Thursday, we borrow 25 billion shillings. Do you follow treasury bill auctions? We report them on business every time. So every Thursday we borrow. The budget deficit this year, and we brought it down from what Jubilee had, is 650 billion shillings. Okay? But then that is what we have done in the past to crowd out the private sector. Yeah? So by doing what we're doing with the Hustler Fund is intermediating that money back to the private sector. So what you're telling us that we should use it to finance government is actually now moving the opposite, because government was crowding out the private sector. When you crowd out the private sector, the people who take the brunt of it are the people at the bottom. In fact, if you see what happened when government went on a big borrowing spree in 2005, you look at the data and you break the private sector went down. But if you break down who lost out in the private sector, it was SMEs. So what you're doing is knowing that because that's where the markets fail, and that's where the predatory lenders came and took advantage, because those are the people who are crowded out most. So what government is saying, because we have the capacity to go to the market and borrow from banks, and banks will lend the government at 8%, but they will not lend these poor people money. So we go to the banks,